The other thing on rings is, and I see it all the time, it drives me crazy, I call it getting strong in the wrong position. They're doing all these strength skills and doing everything on rings, but they're not working the muscles that they need to work. Just the simple turn of the wrist changes what muscles they're using. You've got to get those rings turned out and make sure you're doing your strength in the right position.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the NGA podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Grady, and I am here with my incredible co-hosts,
Dr. Ian Kreider,
Mike Naddour,
Bob Axelrod.
All right, so today we're going to be looking at men's strength and conditioning, and it's going to be led by Mike. Mike's going to be breaking down some shoulder strength, planche presses, and smart ways to build strength without losing mobility. Mike, you get to start the show.
Yeah, I think, we're going to be looking at primarily strength and conditioning, but specific for still rings. This is an area that a lot of the boys struggle with. The skills and the moves are very hard, and you have to kind of focus in on really specific positions and exercises that are going to lead up and help them to learn those higher level skills when they get older. So primarily we're looking at building the shoulder strength. We took a look at like cast handstands for girls in a previous podcast. And these are some of the same strength exercises that will help that along. So not just for boys, but something that the girls can utilize for their cast handstand work. Yeah, so that's kind of where we are. We're going to zone in on still rings, if you will, and some of the things that will help. It also helps on floor exercise, strength skills, and general, press handstand work, planches, things like that. Rob's a little blurry. I don't know why.
Too much concealer. Cheez-Its time.
Yeah, I saw it up there.
Today's episode sponsored by Aldi brand Cheez-It.
Okay, all right, Mike, tell us what we're going to see in this first video.
Okay, this first video is working on a planche press, basically, which is a straight arm, straight body press. And it's working basically all the deltoid, all the shoulder muscles, also the core strength. And this exercise has to be assisted by the coach for probably a long period of time. This is the one that would be great for cast handstands for girls, but it's especially important for any type of planche work and later on Maltese work on rings for the guys. So it just goes down to the planche position and then helps the athlete go back up. The shoulders go forward, and you notice his body stays hollow pretty much the whole time on that.
Mm-hmm.
So real simple, just planche presses or straight body presses. The coach is spotting the legs to take some weight off the athlete. Also, he has a hand on the shoulder to make sure that the athlete doesn't go too far forward as he's plunging forward there, so the athlete doesn't fall on his nose. He's got his right hand on the shoulder there. So this is like the beginning first steps of working on the planche work. These aren't in any specific order, so this is just a good exercise with the coach. This is a similar exercise with the ball where the athlete leans forward and then pushes his shoulders back. So he's leaning forward and back on the plyo ball or that exercise ball.
Ooh, I love how far over he gets.
Yeah, he gets way far over. It's awesome. And we like to do those with the girls too on the single rail. Like it's probably a better idea if we use some parallettes, even to help out their shoulders a little more. It's great.
Yeah,
and
athletes trying to stay hollow, not arch the back. Try to stay hollow the whole time as they're leaning forward.
Yeah, he's pretty far forward. It's awesome.
Yeah,
it's like he heard you say that correction, Mike, because like right when you said it, you saw him hollow.
All right, this is a little more advanced. You go from handstand and then lower through the planche and just try to barely touch your toes on the floor. Starts in the handstand, leans forward into the planche, keeping the hollow position, and then touches his feet on the floor. And eventually, as he gets stronger, believe it or not, he's going to be able to press back up from there in that position like the coach was assisting. This is more the beginning steps. It's the tuck planche. So tuck planche position, and then he extends his legs out into a straddle, making it more difficult. And as you see, as he straddles his legs, you'll see his shoulders go a little further forward. So this is just a tucked position to straddle position planche.
Thinking.
Maybe. There you go.
There it is. So watch his shoulders go a little bit more forward as his legs come out, because they're trying to offset that weight. Now, this is important. I don't know if you can freeze that position or not, but
Yeah.
this is important because when he's extended out, so the strength on rings, it's hard to do. Obviously, it's hard to do these skills and these elements on the rings because the rings are moving. But the reason his shoulders go forward is if you had kind of a teeter-totter, like a balance, he has to get equal weight on both sides of his hands. So his hands are kind of like the balance point. He needs to get equal weight in front of his hands and behind his hands to do this skill. And so if you can get balance in that position, it doesn't take as much strength for the athlete to do it. So that balance of having equal weight in front of his hands and behind his hands on these pressing skills, whether it be Planche, Maltese, whatever it is, that balance is just as important as the actual strength of the athlete.
Yeah, and that's why you'll see that not every, especially on the men's side of things, not every gymnast is going to have the same amount of lean. Not every, like especially on a Maltese, their hands are going to be a little bit wider, a little bit closer to their body, and that all just depends on how much muscle mass they have on the top half versus how much muscle mass they have on the bottom half, and trying to balance the two.
Right.
So don't get caught up by saying like, well, your arms have to be here, they have to be pinched to your sides. Well, I've seen guys that, man, their arms almost look like they're 45 degrees out to their side on a Maltese, but it's just because they're way more top heavy than they are bottom heavy.
So this is with weight, and
Yeah,
he's keeping his lower back hollow, and he's kind of pressing through that planche or that Maltese position. But in this one, he's able to get a full range of motion to work all the muscles actually a little bit better. So this is another exercise that we have the boys do to work on that planche positioning.
And how often do you do these exercises? How do you schedule them in?
Well, the way we train each day, different body part, if you will. Gymnastics is overall, and you work on all of your body parts as you're doing all the skills and development and things like that. When we focus in on strength, we'll break it up into body parts. So this would be in what we call the chest and tricep, but it works shoulders also. So any type of pushing type work, we would do one day. Then the next day we do pulling type work, like rope climbs, chin-ups, things like that. And then, the next day could be leg day. And then the next day we could just focus on shoulders. So when we do our strength, we don't do an overall strength, like whole body strength. We break it down because we're trying to work those specific muscles really hard, break them down, and then give them time to recover so that they actually build muscle. So it's important for them to really focus in on those specific muscle groups. The exercises we showed today are very specific for a skill that they're trying to learn. But along with those exercises that you saw, we would do handstand push-ups, we would do bar dips, we would do anything that has to do with pushing, and utilize that and focus on that for that day's strength. And the next day could be core strength. We're working on, all their core strength through their back, through abdominals, all of that. So, in gymnastics and doing strength, a lot of the exercises that you saw also work core strength, but we're not focusing on that particular day. But we will pick a day and focus on that. So that's just the way that we do it. We found success with that. When you can focus in, really break down the muscles, get them sore, build up some of that lactic acid, and then the next day, give them plenty of time to recover. So they'll have like a full week before they hit that muscle group again, giving them plenty of time to recover and then start again to break it down so that they can build it up. And they rotate through the week that way. So along with all of that, we incorporate some cardio work with the guys. And just because they have a good 4 upper body events that they work, they're always working on developing all their muscles in the everyday training that they do. And so along with that, we don't feel like we need to try to do, I used to call it the Barbie and Ken workout, where you try to hit one body part but do it in one day. So hit all your body parts in one day. And we just don't have success with that as far as building strength with the guys.
Yeah.
It's more important to because every day they're working all the muscle groups just in doing gymnastics. And so when we do our strength and conditioning, we'll focus in on that specific muscle group. And like we showed today, actually specific for that strength element that they're trying to learn. For cross strength, we would do some other things, but for the planche, Maltese work, straight arm press, regular press, all of that, those are some of the exercises we would do with the guys.
Yeah,
And
so a
what kind of
couple
reps
things
do you
that
do with
Mike
this? 'Cause I'm
is
guessing that changes with their age as they mature, right?
Yeah, the repetition, like we primarily use just their body weight, unless we're doing some free weights like you saw at the end. They were working. We just work with their body weight. As they mature and get older, we can gradually add weight to them. The amount of repetitions are going to be somewhere between 8 and 12 for gymnastics. But like the planche presses that are being spotted and things like that, I would say that's more of a, they're going to do probably 6 repetitions. And because their bodies grow and that when they get older, they actually get heavier. So as long as they can keep their strength to weight ratio up, we keep the reps pretty much the same regardless of their age. So the only thing that we do with I say older athlete, once they hit puberty, somewhere in that 13, 14, 15 range for boys, that's when we'd start to add some weight to them, whether it be a light weight vest, weight belt, things like that. So they start doing the exercise, making their body heavier and doing the same amount of reps. And they have to push themselves a little bit harder when they get older, and you have to make it harder on them. Otherwise, they get used to just moving their body weight around, which is good. But when you're doing a full routine that has, especially on rings, has multiple strength skills in it, you have to be stronger than just your own body weight for those type of skills. And, I remember going to some World Cups and international competitions, and I would see these ring guys on strength going from planche position through Maltese, through back lever, and then pushing back up through those. And so they're extremely strong. When they finish a ring routine, they're not even really winded because they've added that extra weight to their body so that when they actually take that weight off, those strength skills become easy for them.
Yeah, I really like that you said that it's important for them to keep their strength to weight ratio up. As a spotter and as a coach, we notice that we may spot those things for many years. Like these kids spend so many years with us in gymnastics, going through that, maybe 6, 7, 8, 10 years, and we may be spotting those same skills, but they're just as easy to spot when they're 10 years old and 80 pounds or something, and then all of a sudden they're 16 years old and they're 150 pounds, but we can still spot them because their weight to strength ratio has increased, which shows that your conditioning program and strength training has kept up, because otherwise it's just so much more weight for the coach to spot. And that's a good thing to point out, I think, to some younger coaches. If you're doing all the work, then that gymnast isn't progressing, and their strength to weight ratio is never going to catch up. You have to kind of spot, but you can't over spot, right? I like that number 6. If we do them, I do them in 5s. By the 5th one, if you have to spot a little extra, that's great. But if it's number 1 to number 5, you're squatting through it to spot the kid. Anyway, what am I doing here? It's my workout, not the kid's workout. So yeah, I think that's an important thing to point out.
Yeah, Rob, I
Mhm.
think a lot of younger coaches do make that mistake, and they kill themselves trying to get these kids through these strength positions, and they're physically not ready for it. The athlete's not ready for it. So the focus in the younger years, along with working some of these specific things that we show today, is the general strength. And the
Yeah,
general strength we talked
yeah,
about was, your push-ups, your dips, your handstand push-ups, things like that, your pull-ups, all, rope climb, all what we call general strength, which
yeah,
it's going to help all of your gymnastics.
yeah.
And then zeroing in or focusing in on those specific strengths, like, okay, whatever it happens to be, whether it's if the girl's doing a press on the beam, a press handstand on the beam or something like that, or the guy's learning a planche, working on the specific areas of strength that are going to help that skill, whatever that skill happens to be.
Yeah, I think
So
it's also super important. You pointed out, like, take a strength routine. Get at Donnell's routine at just his last World Championships. I mean, the amount of strength moves that he put back to back to back to back were incredible, right? And so if you're not overtraining, like Mike said, with adding a little bit of weight when you can, when it's necessary, when the body can handle it, is they have to be able to do more than just their body strength at the end there, right? On their fourth strength skill on rings or even on P bars. I mean, they have to be able to get right through there. And Mike, I think you hit the nail right on the head with that one too. When they're done with their ring routine, like they're not even winded. They're like, it's a good set of like chest presses. You can bang out 10 chest presses of your own body weight. Well, then, okay, let's go above your body weight. And then can you still get 10? So then for sure you'll be able to make those skills. Yeah, those are some great points.
So my question about this, because like obviously I'm more used to what's going on with girls. So when it comes to these specific skills, and since their form looks like it's really important and spotting them is important, do you keep these as rotations when they're on an event, or is this just done most of the time with strength and conditioning, like as a
That's
group?
a great question.
Yeah, these are primarily done as a group for strength and conditioning, but along with that, because you don't want to get the guys when they're on the event, you don't want to wear them out too much because they have to do all their balance positions and their swings and things like that. On rings, they go from a handstand and they do a giant, to a handstand again. And so you're focusing a lot more on swing, on dismounts, things like that on the event. But there's always that side station. You saw those tuck planches where he was in a tuck position and out to straddle legs. That's a great side station for the guys to work on rings. The other thing on rings is, and I see it all the time, it drives me crazy. I call it getting strong in the wrong position. They're doing all these strength skills and doing everything on rings, but they have the rings are turned in. So they're not out like parallel bars, and I even have the guys go even out a little bit further than a parallel bars. I don't know if you saw the parallettes that he was using. They were turned out more in a V position with the wider end being away from him. So it simulates how I want the ring position to be. So they get really strong with the rings turned in the wrong way. And those are going to be deductions on rings for the guys. And they're not working the muscles that they need to work. Just the simple turn of the wrist changes what muscles they're using. And I say, oh, you're getting really strong in the wrong position. It's not going to help you. You've got to get those rings turned out and make sure you're doing your strength in the right position. Otherwise, it's not going to help you when you try to do that skill correctly. So doing the strength skill in the right position is important. So I think to answer your question, we primarily do these specific strengths as a strength and conditioning with the guys as a group, but we also incorporate some of them into the rotation on rings. We just don't overdo it because we want them to be fresh when they're working on their swing elements on rings.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I guess the last real question that I have for you, what are these specific strength stations doing to prevent what injuries? Because I think a lot of times that's really important for coaches to know, especially like Rob said, those newer coaches, there are those specific injuries and sometimes certain stations, certain strength skills can help prevent those.
Yeah, I think with the boys, one of the things that I've seen recently with a lot of our athletes is because they have their wrists in the wrong position, but they tend to bend their elbows on some of these strength skills because it's easier to do the strength skill if you have short arms. So the guys with the longer arms will bend their arms to kind of shorten that lever to make it easier for them to do the skill. You see that on a press handstand. But what happens is the joint itself, the elbow joint itself, is picking up a lot of stress. And that's where we're seeing some damage and some you can call it tennis elbow, you can call it whatever. It's overuse of that elbow joint. So by keeping the elbow straight, keeping those positions more specific, with the wrist turned out, the elbow straight, then you're working the correct muscle groups, and you're not damaging a joint that really shouldn't be used during that strength exercise.
Yes, and especially, that's important for those younger coaches to pay attention to because then they'll start to pull in like their biceps, which is a much smaller muscle, which will fatigue much more quickly than they're using their core and their shoulders to make these planche moves. And then they're going to sacrifice, just like Mike said, their elbows, and then it's going to turn into their wrists, and then they could wind up having some bicipital tendonitis, and then that kind of spirals up into their shoulder a little bit. So yeah, especially the younger coaches kind of pay close attention to that. They're not pulling in that bent arm, so they're pulling in smaller muscle groups to sacrifice those joints.
Yeah. I think the other thing as far as that goes, Rebecca, is the coaches need to understand, younger coaches, as much time you should spend on strengthening the shoulders and the upper body, you have to spend equal time on the flexibility of those muscles. And that's really where the injury prevention comes in. As the boys grow older, that nice bridge position they used to have when they were 12, it's not, they can barely get their head off the ground when they're 15, 16. So staying with that flexibility as you're building the strength is really important to keep their body healthy, keep their shoulders healthy. And that flexibility is a big part of that. And they're not going to lose any strength by being flexible. So I think that's equally important for the guys, especially as they start maturing, getting older, and they start building that bulk muscle, if you will, those big shoulders and arms. They've got to stay with that flexibility. And Ian, I'm sure you've seen quite a bit of that, and that flexibility becomes extremely important.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And boys will tighten up so incredibly fast. And especially as they get into teenage years, and everybody tightens up a little bit because they just like sit around in a slouch posture looking at their phone all day. So they stiffen up really fast anyway. But especially on the boy side, and then once they stiffen up.
You tell me to sit up there a little bit? Is that what that
That's right. That's right. I'm looking at you, Rob.
Is that better
Rob
now?
changed his posture.
That looks good. That looks good.
Really?
So, but
Okay.
with boys, once they stiffen up, man, it's really hard to get them loosened back up again. It takes some really dedicated work and maybe even some specialized stretching of, hey, we got to do some overpressure and we've got to actually go to someone who knows how to stretch you, right? Or I need to learn how to stretch you as my athlete. Now, normally I'm pretty anti stretching our athletes, but if you're talking about like a 15, 16, 17-year-old boy that's got all bulked up all of a sudden, and that little thin pencil mustache, and then you might have to kind of get after it, but make sure you know what you're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, then don't do it, right? But send them to somebody to get stretched, but man, they've got to get loosened back up again.
I'd also like to add in there too, I know I keep saying for the newer coaches, but I think be careful. I made this mistake when I was younger in my coaching career that we used to let athletes stretch athletes with shoulders, and that's just not okay.
Yeah.
And they don't have the knowledge on how hard to push or pull on another gymnast, and their strength may be so much stronger than the other, and they may be trying to push it too hard, and try to stay away from athletes stretching athletes, like for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Especially like rotator cuff stuff. And we used to lay down and let people stretch our rotator cuffs. Man, those muscles are so incredibly small that, man, I don't want another athlete doing that.
Yeah, I think the key factor is strengthen the area, strengthen the shoulders primarily, and then with that, like you were talking about, work on that flexibility. I like to use the athlete's body weight when stretching. If you have a stall bars in your gym, the bars along the wall, I will put a back roller, like have them have their back to that. I put a back roller right about where they're, just below their shoulders, and just have them hang with their own body weight. And just spending a little time in that position really helps to open up those shoulders and will help the injury from happening, because instead of the shoulders and the labor and being pinched, they have the flexibility to go through the ranges of motion that you have on still rings or giants and things like that. The girls are in the same situation. They have to keep those shoulders flexible. You have to keep that bridge, if you will, opened up. And then the other factor is in that position is obviously the quads too, which is the lower body of the leg. And there's all types of stretching that they can do on their own with their own body weight that will work for that. But that's one of the exercises that I really have the guys do. And that is sometimes a side station on rings for us, where, okay, you go over to this and you do this stretch, and then you come back over the rings for your swing. And so we're working on some of the shoulder flexibility that they need for injury prevention, and also to do the skills correctly. And that's a good side station. So I really try to push that one with the guys.
That's great. I was actually going to ask you guys, what's one thing that you can share to balance that strength and flexibility? So if we can give those new coaches something that can help balance that, maybe one drill or something, or how to rotate it in.
Yeah. So my thing
it's hard.
Either it has to have dedicated time, and it shouldn't be during warm-ups. Warm-ups is not a time to get more flexible. Warm-ups is a time to warm up and knock the rust off from the last day's practice. But it's not time to get more flexible unless for some reason you're going to spend 45 minutes on warm-ups. But most people don't. Most people spend 15 to 20 minutes on warm-ups so that way they can get to their events, which is perfectly acceptable. There's nothing wrong with that. But then you need to have some dedicated time to work on flexibility. So that should either be side stations, like what Mike was saying, which is an excellent suggestion. Only thing with side stations, I would stay away from static stretching while you're doing side stations for flexibility. And the reason why is because if you do static stretching, it can actually decrease power output. It's a small amount, but small amounts can end up being pretty big amounts in gymnastics. If someone's sprint time in soccer goes down 5%, that's not a huge deal, but you miss the P-bar by 5%, that might be a big deal. So be careful on static stretching. But other than that, side stations are great, or have some dedicated cool down time where they're actually stretching. But either way, you've got to have some time to actually stretch. You have dedicated time for strength and conditioning, have dedicated time for your stretching as well.
Yeah. I think for the boys, especially as they go through those after puberty, when they start to build the muscle, I think it's almost a 50-50 where they have to spend 50% of their time on strength and another 50 on flexibility to keep that going. I was thinking of another thing, having a straight stick, and I'm taking the shoulders through that inlocate, dislocate position and starting off wide and then gradually getting your hands closer on that stick. That's a great side station that we'll use with the guys.
Yeah, that
Also
was stuff we were doing every day. We'd finish warm-ups and we'd just grab a stick and we'd work on shoulders. And you can stretch rotator cuff on your own with the stick. There's ways to do that too. But yeah, definitely at least the inlocate, dislocate stuff in both grips.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds like we have to do our next podcast on flexibility and exercises with the guys. That would be guys and gals. That would be great. I think it would be really beneficial for sure. But anyway, I think just as a takeaway note, try to keep your flexibility and your strength 50-50 as you're doing this. Focusing on those specific exercises. Some of them we showed today, if they're learning and trying to learn a specific skill, and even if they're not going to have not that young man's not going to have a Maltese probably for another 5 years, but building the muscles that are going to help them learn that skill, that you have to start young. The specific muscle and muscle groups that they need are tremendously important to start early with them. Obviously, if you're going to do crosses, they're never going to do a cross on their own when they're younger. You're always going to assist it. I make a rule that if the boy can't do 10 handstand push-ups on their own, they're not allowed to work a cross on their own. And that seems to fall in line pretty well with their strength and their shoulder strength so that they don't injure themselves. So keep that balance 50-50, work the side stations, and always, don't rush them out of you spotting them. You'll know when they get so light where you're doing nothing, you're like, okay, it's time. And
when you're just kind of bouncing them on your
when
hands.
you're just barely balancing them, they'll figure it out, and then they can start working those exercises on their own.
I'll say one thing I wanted to say before my internet cut out, and it may make sense here or it may make sense if you want to splice it in somewhere or just delete it, whatever you want to do. But, what Mike was talking about, he has kind of two different types of exercises that he puts his gymnasts through, whether he realizes it or not. He has skill-specific strengthening, and then he has muscle-specific strengthening. Right. And if you've been in men's gymnastics for a while, you have found that there's a small percentage of guys that are just naturally gifted and strong on rings. And the reason why is because they are just naturally gifted and strong. It's not because they have a different body build necessarily. It's not because they are good at those ring specific skills. They're strong everywhere and they can do ring strength. But we just see it pop up on ring strength the most. So if you want to develop really strong athletes on the men's side and, women's side too, but we're talking about men. So on the men's side, then you need to develop just really, really strong athletes. And that goes with weight training and really hard body weight exercises and things like that. And then you go from the strength-based training to skill-based strength, where then you're doing planche work and you're doing ring strength. But I think the trap that coaches fall into is they say, hey, I want to get my guys better at ring strength, so we're going to do a bunch of ring strength. And you go, well, ring strength will build some muscle, but maybe not as effectively as your general conditioning will. And the reason why is because you're going through limited range of motion when you do ring strength, or even no range of motion, just isometric holds in ring strength. And I saw that mistake retroactively. I saw that mistake going through college where we just worked isometric holds, but we never actually went through the movement to develop the muscle. The muscle needs movement in order to grow and get stronger. And if you're just doing isometric holds, it'll work eventually, but it's going to take forever. And so making sure that your athletes are getting really strong and then taking that strength and converting it into ring strength by doing the skill specific strengthening. Hope that makes sense.
Does make sense.
Yep. Sure
Yeah.
does.
That was good. Okay.
All
Well,
right.
I think that's a wrap. Mike, thank you so much for giving us the videos and breaking it down. I think this is going to help a lot of coaches, especially new coaches, to walk away with some real practical ideas that they can use at practice and how to use them. So if you are a boys coach and you want more strength ideas, skill breakdowns, or progressions, send us a message on any of our social media platforms. We'd love to hear what's working for you in your gyms and what you would have questions with. So thank you for joining us here at the NGA podcast, and stay happy, healthy, and high performing.